09 budget. And in that budget were all the things that we felt like that we needed to continue operating our schools in an adequate and fundamental way for all children that need it. Our main focus is to make sure that we keep the teachers within the classroom. That's one of our focus. We know that there's a lot of other things going on within our schools, but we're here today to focus on the budget and how can we work together as a group with you and come up with a number that's going to be beneficial for the school. If there's any, we have some information flyers that we'd like to pass out to everyone.
Just some things were taken out and put in the other document.
Oh, okay.
The other document is updated.
They had the same date on them.
Okay. I was lazy.
Why, you don't have enough to do? All right.
But you didn't notice I'm changing it. Okay.
As everyone received the first sheet, and again, we're going to go over this. I'm not a financial specialist. I don't deal with numbers, but we have the people that do. But we know that there are certain things that drive our education budget, okay? And on that this page here are the preliminary cost drivers of this budget, okay? And we talked about teachers, administrative and teacher salaries. I'm not going to go over one by one because I know there's a lot of information to intake. So, we just look at these, and if you have questions, we have the specialists here that can answer those questions for you. Then we move on to the maintenance budgets, and we will talk about, look at all the items within that budget that helps drive our budget. And you can start with the employee benefit, workers' compensation, tutors, and on down the list. Okay? And then we move on to the third page. We talk about new staffing for teachers and how many we're going to need at which school and what specialty that we need those individuals in. Okay? And then the last page is the added teacher value. And we can look at the safe harbor and the dollar amount that comes with the safe harbor. Our nurse, I think it's 0.5 nurse that we want to be put back into our system. And we institute tech curriculum administrators and staff development, gifted and talent. Those are the things that we know that continuously drive our school system and development. We as a group, along with the superintendents, would like to continue to work on the bus contract. That's not a final number there, working with the bus contract. It's not a final number on working with Signal, so that's not closed yet. Okay, we continue to meet with the vendors to reduce the budget. And as a group, and we have expressed it to the superintendent, we want our figures to be so there's numbers that you can look at and say that there's nothing hidden in those numbers. So that's what we are. I want to sort of turn it over to our chairperson that works very hard with the finance committee, Mr. Janella, if he wants to add something to what
just briefly to say thank you for allowing us to be here and to reiterate gladness to say that this budget is still a work in progress budget, in addition to working with the cooperation of David and the mayor. There's a close unity and conversations almost weekly in terms of trying to resolve issues or coming up with a plan of attack to solve some problems. I think tonight would be a good question and answer period, basically, for Dr. Pascarella and Ed to entertain your questions. So basically, they are professionals on this, the driving force on that. So open it up to Dr. Pascarella. you pick up from here.
Okay, thank you all. Yeah, you got a lot to go. Thanks. Many of you have been to our meetings, and the reason why you see the entire board here, because we really feel we're at a tipping point. If you know, when you take a peek back in terms of our numbers, the average number of our increases, I think we've been very mindful of the economic conditions and taken and addressed those issues very directly and honestly. Always trying to leave teachers in the classroom. We took, I believe, a few years ago, we did early retirement. We really reduced that. We've been negotiating each year all of our contracts. The efficiency rate of the use of our money, I think, you know, for what's you know, we do use comparisons, and it does say that we use our dollar very wisely. At the end of the year, we have been an opportunity to return money back to the city, because the way things evolved in a school budget, much different than a municipal budget, there are variances within that happen. Special education occurs, students move in and out. Our mobility rate, that you've heard us talk about this, is up to 39%, not only across the district, but up and down the district. Our poverty rate's gone from 50%, from 32% a few years ago, to 50% now, to one school that's at 70%. So, you know, and one of the biggest predictors of need for more time for kids in order to achieve basic skills, which is a focus for us, has been their SES, or their economic status, more than ethnicity or anything else. That's not any great revelation to all of us. So the budget that we've had the last few years, quite frankly, we've reduced to the point where I've asked for 5.09%. At that time, it was the best guesstimate I had at that time. I called Colleen and asked what she would like for tonight. We have some updates on the numbers, but in that, one of the largest drivers that we have, obviously, has been our personnel. 82% of our budget is made up of personnel. The other 18% of it, although seems to be discretionary, isn't when you look at transportation, utilities, and the rest. So we've asked the principals, you know, what they need in their schools. Obviously, the board's focus and their focus is going to make sure we have our classrooms staffed correctly. So we're looking at staffing. The other thing is we're one of the few districts in this sector of the state, if not quadrant or half, that's growing. And these aren't just demographers talking. These kids are coming in our building each and every day, and our enrollment's going up, leading to, that you're going to be talking, I think, to the mayor pretty soon about doing some additions onto the buildings. I mean, so, you know, they're there. So all of this coming together has put us in a position to ask what kind of budget increases that we're asking. The first part of that budget is just moving things forward, focusing our core programs, just what we do every day, our business of, you know, going in, making sure there's materials in the classroom, and having our teachers working with our students. We're trying to keep our class sizes. We've increased class sizes. That's not just here in Danbury, but it seems to be across the country. As budgets go down, class sizes go up. We're not any different than that. Our class sizes, our K-1 is about, we're trying to stay at 22, although that's in its pure sense. We have some that may run less, we have some that run more. At the upper level from 3 on, we're at 25, in some cases 27, 28. You know, we're dealing with that. At the secondary level, we have classes to keep the high school comprehensive. Some people will say, well, why do you only have 18 in that classroom and 30 now? Well, sometimes it's the third or the last sequence of a course. Students are entitled to making sure that's there, whether it's in AB, BC calculus, whether it's in kinesiology or physics, whatever it is, we're offering that third in the sequence for kids. The board's also redefined what kids ought to be doing at the secondary level. Instead of just shotgunning through selection, the board has narrowed their focus so the kids are taking more of a science, mathematics, more of an academic path. That's increased some of our more expensive courses, which happens to be in the sciences. Kids are taking labs now. So all of that is playing havoc in here with our budget. But, you know, again, what we have been trying to do is reduce that, and I think we've been doing that. We have been working with our consultants and trying to reduce the numbers in the benefit package. And I think at this point, even though the reflection in here is at that rate, we've been able to reduce that somewhat We met with the constituents last week, or 2 weeks ago. They're coming back next week to see if they can redefine that number so that we can reduce it further. The part of the budget that takes care of that is called the maintenance budget, just moving it forward. If you look at the budget after that, then you can see that it is a budget that's reflective of the enrollment increases and any of the, let me just turn the page for you. It's on the third page. So you see a maintenance budget, then you see a budget that says enrollment increases and standard state mandates. That's our bilingual students. We need to add some elementary teachers. We need some more staffing at the middle school, and you can see the sciences at the secondary school, which is about $500,000 in order to do that. So the value-added part of our budget is about 6.1%, just over 0.5%. In here as well, the last few years, for the past 4 years, we've taken the Obama bus, they call it. The last amount of money that we've taken has been the $1.2 million that we spread over 2 years. That's the jobs fund. That was not money that was squandered away. People said, well, why'd you use it? Well, that just kept the reliance on the city municipal budget that much lower. We agreed it was better to do that, to put these teachers into the classroom and see what happened as the economy improves. Well, it hasn't improved to the point that we wanted to, and unless the enrollment went down, we needed to have these folks. In fact, we needed to have them plus more for the coming year that we're increasing our enrollment. So in our enrollment increases in state mandate, you see it increases another 0.61% above the maintenance budget. The value-added budget is really simple. You're in a school district in need of improvement. Hartford is looking at Danbury in terms of our achievement levels. We think that the teachers doing a marvelous job in getting some growth, but there are more things that they need to do. You've been hearing a lot about the reform that Malloy is putting together. What he's talking about basically is, in the past, time has been a constant. It's been 180 days, and achievement has been a variable. It's kind of the inverse of that. Now, achievement is the constant, and time has to be the variable. So we're saying that no matter what you do, we want kids to achieve at a certain level. And we know to get these youngsters there, we need more time. And in this budget, you see something that says safe harbor interventions. They are folks that are doubling up time, extending time for students who need remediation, and in some cases, extension. Bill talks with his staff very plainly. We have a 10-month school year, and we're trying to get 14 months worth of growth, and we just can't do that without any more time. These are very capable kids with gaps in their learning, and we need to give them more time. So it is value added. It's simply saying we need to put in the budget some things that are going to assist us. The other part of this that you may have some questions, you're listening to the governor saying he's putting $50 million in education. He's taking about $40 million in identifying the content of the schools, about 20 districts that are in need of improvement. We are one of those 20 districts. There's about $39.5 million coming to those districts. Danbury is in a position through an application process, an improvement process, that can realize about $2.2 million of added revenue in ECS. But that's only going to be predicated on an application that we apply of closing the achievement gap, of which Connecticut has the distinction of having the largest number one variable between achievement and the achievement gap throughout the country. We're number one in that. Consequently, they're saying, here's some more resources, provide us an opportunity for districts and towns to see if you can mitigate that gap. So the value added here, although is pretty short here, you will see it's generated differently as we start learning more about this reform. We've been meeting with the mayor. We met today. We met this afternoon. We've talked on the phone. We're trying to put the town in a position to maximize its fund while keeping an eye on the economic conditions. And that's a reality that we're faced with. We're looking at some things that are within the budget that are capable of being carried over. There's a 1% opportunity that the law is permitting towns to work with schools in order to, if there's some excess funds, to remain that in the budget. That'll assist us in mitigating expenditures. So we're doing everything that we can to bring a budget to you that's reasonable and acceptable, and that we can access all these funds that the state's going to provide for us. But the word condition, mindfully, is said conditionally. It is not guaranteed. It's on the submission process, and we feel very confident we can do that. We're one of the 15 school systems that has been under their supervision, providing them with an application about how we're mitigating our achievement gap with a plan. They've accepted that plan. The timing is good for us because we have not submitted a new plan, and it will incorporate a lot of these ideas. The board has been talking about extending time for youngsters. Ever since I've gotten here, I've heard the town talking about kindergartens and extending times and wraparound. So these things are possible, but first we got to handle the core obligations that we have, and that's where we're at right now. With all that said, we're moving forward with the major drivers, trying to reduce that, identifying some budgetary issues that we might not have to do, that we may not need for next year. For example, technology. There's an offer to look at our technology. David was over and spoke to Ed last week about it. He can speak to it, about how we can put a plan together to actually update our technology. We worked with the city for, you'll see in here, there's a reinstitute the director of technology. Every time I come to this meeting, so what are you guys doing together? Well, here we're looking at working together, providing one technology person across the district. They meet once every 2 weeks to look at common areas that we can do more efficiency. I think we've gotten better at that, and that's been a good thing for us to do, but we're still in need. We're still at a tipping point. We're still got to, figure out how to fund this enterprise for these youngsters, with the growing enrollment and the need factor. We've negotiated good contracts with the faculty. There's been some questions about how is it 400,000 when I see $1 million in there. If you look at the page, we tried to explain that to you. I mean,
Can you go over that?
Sure, we can go over it. If you look at that, if you look at the second page here on the bottom, it talks about the net contract increases of 400,000. It ostensibly looks at the total increase is 1,565.
That's for all employees.
Of which 1,070,000 are teachers, okay? And you can see the other breakouts there. That when we applied under employee benefits, when we applied the negotiated amount of money that's attributable to that salary and benefit item that we had anticipated would come to fruition during negotiations, it leaves a net, if you look at the bottom, a net increase of $400,000 this year. So although the increase is larger, when we present this, if we'd have gone forward to an arbitrator, we look at benefits and salaries. So that's why we had said that we felt it was a fair contract for this year. I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
No, as you said,
Where do you, show me those numbers. Okay?
I know, I told him the same thing. At my age, I need vision. She's younger than I am.
They don't add up to what you just said.
Right here. See this down here?
Yeah.
If you follow it up on top, you
Yeah.
follow it up on top, go ahead, Ed. Look at the
Yeah, it is.
educational job, right below educational, which is educational job funding, 0. Right here? Right here?
Yes, it is 0, yes.
and then next to it is the salaries. The total increase for all employees in the budget is $1,005,000.
Right.
Out of that, $1,070,000 is
Right.
teachers, 27,000 nurses, 107,000 is administrators, and the difference is for all other employees. And then if you go down to the benefits, $1,150,000 preliminary benefit plan review. The work in progress, we already decreased that number by $1,076,000 on negotiations and the contract language. So the difference between the contract language and the increase with teachers netted out at $400,000.
So in order for that to come down, it's not only our experience rate with our employee groups, it's also the manipulation of deductibles and co-premium pays, all of which are part of negotiations. Those things coming together at that time, the negotiators, along with our specialists, said you can anticipate a reduction of X amount. That's how we arrived at that number at that time. And in fact, that's why it's $400,000.
You said, Sal, you said that the benefits signing is still in process.
Correct.
Do you anticipate it drop much?
Yes.
You want to explain that?
Well, we're still in negotiations. Right now, we started at 10.9, we're down to 5.7, and we're meeting them, and we told them, well, we anticipate, and we're meeting them next week.
when they were in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, they needed to go back because of what we put in front of them. They want another month of experience. So they truncate their experience, and we felt they would have enough information to come back to us
Next week, Wednesday.
next Wednesday, and they try to give us a final edict on what they would. We do expect that to be reduced.
And the experience is for the workers' compensation, end of it, right?
Excuse me? That's not workers'
No,
comp,
that's not.
that's just fringe benefits.
Medical
benefits.
That's a different,
We're working with the city on workers' comp. As you know, the first 500,000 we have to pick up. So we're working with PERMA to see if we can be a little different than the city on that. So we'll just look at that.
Is your experience in this type of work in negotiating for benefits and all that sort of stuff, has it ever occurred to you, and this is me and my limited knowledge of it, has it ever occurred that perhaps if you teamed up with other communities for benefits, insurance benefits, that you could have a bigger group?
What's happening now, the governor has put forth a plan for that. We have submitted all of our information to OPM, and we'll see what it looks like. Coming back, two boards already, that increase is bigger than their own increase. So, it's new, just started. And the problem is it starts July 1. We get a price, let's say, June 1st. We have to now tell, okay, can we change what we have in our language in the contract? So it's brand new. They just rolled it out last week. They have a problem with, the only one so far is Oxford Health. Blue Cross has not made their decision to go on that plan yet. So they're back and forth. So we have submitted all of our information, OPM, they have to get back to us, so we don't know. But they've tried that. As you know, if you do two communities, they're very different.
I know, I was just wondering.
Yeah, so here, the state has one plan that everybody wants to go on, so we're looking at that. We submitted, I think about another, I'll tell you in a minute.
Does it look like you're moving towards the state plan?
Not this year.
Well, I wouldn't say that. We're still negotiating.
Oh, that helps with negotiating.
Well, that's right, correct.
Because
No doubt about it.
Cigna
We're still
doesn't want to.
negotiating.
What chances
May
do we
still
go by? You're still negotiating?
Still negotiating.
They're
Still
We're
negotiating.
still negotiating.
We're one of about 30 towns and
You'll know
boards.
by when?
But
Yeah.
after we hear from Cigna,
Yeah.
then we'll know more.
Which should be,
Next week.
Next week, and we're getting some numbers back from this group as well, because Ed's been going to the meetings. We're
but
waiting for-
you would be able to have numbers by the end of March.
We will have a better number from Cigna by the end of March.
We may not like that number because it's not low enough.
Not low enough that we want to
Will you
continue.
be able to have numbers before or after we receive the mayor's proposed budget and before our next meeting?
When's
Which
your
would
next
be,
meeting?
I was hoping that maybe the second week in April.
Yeah, we should, yeah.
We have to.
Yes, you will have it.
Makes all the
Yeah,
difference
no,
in the world, but
no
if
doubt
we have
about
to
it.
decide on an
Yeah.
amount, we need to know what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Right.
The issue with this is not, even if the number was favorable, comparability of our plan and the plan that's submitted by the state is not something that we've done unilaterally by the board. We have to convene all of our unions, and we have to demonstrate to them that there's compatibility. And if that can be demonstrated, then, we have the right to move forward. So we're just very careful of the plan that's there. So Blue Cross Blue Shield has not made a commitment, so that's a big issue. So we're waiting for that whole thing to come to fruition. Your question, with Bethel, Newtown, all of us looked at a common plan, but our contracts are so different, Greg, we could not align something. So the state, suit the thing, if everybody aligns to the state one, then it's workable because it subsumes a lot more. But individual co-ops, not very well. And people wanted to come to Danbury because we had a greater number. There's reductions in it, but it wasn't to our advantage if we couldn't line up. So when we looked at that 2 years ago, it wasn't good. Now it's a little more of a reality because of what the state's doing. But we're trying to find that. But we should have a number. And I think that's why Cigna is really sharpening their pencil. They know they can
Right.
lose us.
Right. Did you want to add that?
Yeah,
Something that-
we encountered the same experience a couple of years ago when the state approached us as well. You know, it was, it sounded like a great plan, but when you ran the numbers, it just was not favorable for the city, for all the reasons that you guys had mentioned. You know, every town has different, you know, plan offerings. And when you start laying down the numbers, it may not be that efficient for you to enter into the pool at this time. They've got to standardize the plans. Just like, you know, now we're on the same plan as the Board of Ed. There may be opportunities there for us to join together, and we've had this conversation before. Again, the same issue is to standardize. And so that's you know, we're always going to encounter those hurdles. We're rather new to Cigna right now, so we're getting over, you know, we're trying to get comfortable there. And then if you guys are still with Cigna, perhaps we can talk about how to, you know, get more comfortable. But I think, you know, first thing is first you know, shop around, you know, make them sharpen their pencil as you guys are doing. And that's why I understand why you won't commit. You know, why commit when you can, you know, look at the state plan and perhaps you can get a better deal with the state.
That's our point. Bill's behind me, and there's Bill and Cameron, if you want to add anything. You guys?
No, other than it's a very small thing, under the value added, it's somewhat of a misnomer. Some of those things are on value added pieces, textbooks. We cut those last year because we could. It was discretionary. We cut professional development from 130,000 down to 34,000, which for a district our size is ridiculous. So those were just restoration efforts. The safe harbor interventions that Sal talked about truly would be value-added piece, and that's along the thinking of the governor and the Commissioner of Education, which is the other point. It's all about supplemental as opposed to supplanting, and that's something we want to find the mayor to.
So could you just explain that safe harbor vehicle? I've never heard of that.
Sure. We invented it.
That's why I didn't
I don't mean to throw a lot of educational jargon out at you, but under No Child Left Behind NCLB, each period of time, it's usually a couple of years, either the CAP test at the high school or the Connecticut Mastery test at the grades 3 through 8, you have to meet a certain threshold in terms of your scores. If you fail to meet it for 2 years in a row, you're identified as a school, you need an improvement. A safe harbor, it's called adequate yearly progress. You have to make a reasonable, it's like going up a set of stairs. You have to make enough progress every year to get to that new threshold. Another way of making that, hitting that threshold is by saying, you know, you haven't moved all your kids forward to this new high level, but what you have done is taken the most difficult, most challenging youngsters, kids at the very bottom, and you've brought them up. So although you didn't hit this, you moved a substantial number of kids forward. That's called safe harbor, and it's another way in the law to be deemed making your threshold. We put in 4 safe harbor interventionists, as we call them, at one of our elementary schools, and that was the first school identified as being a school in need of improvement in this part of Connecticut, and it was the first school unidentified in this part of Connecticut, and it also won something called the Lone Pine Award, which stretches from Bridgeport to Greenwich all the way up to Danbury. We were in competition with all school systems in that catchment area, and Danbury made more progress than any other school system in that catchment area at Moore Street School. So we won that award, which was very nice and prestigious, but what it showed us was this was a good strategy for moving the school forward. So we exported that to Haystown Avenue School, to Ellsworth Avenue School, and to South Street, which were the other 3 elementary schools identified as being in need of improvement. And since they're Title I schools, they're subject to the sanctions. So it's a way of helping us to get those schools unidentified and demonstrate the kind of progress that I think we can make.
So did we have safe harbor last?
We only had it at Moore Street School. This year was the first year we put it in at the other 3 schools, and the reports coming back from the principals based on what they call common formative assessment. 4 schools. God bless you. Moore Street, Haystown, Ellsworth, and South Street. And so obviously, we're monitoring their performance, and so far, it looks like we've got traction with that particular. It's a very small strategy because it's, it's not a huge multi-million-dollar effort. It's a tiny little strategy, but since it proved to work over at Moore Street, we thought if we did it the correct way, we could get some additional traction and get it through schools.
In addition, here in transportation, just two issues with that. Right now, there's the reauthorization of the Educational Elementary and Secondary Act for NCLB. In there, we are providing an education for students that want to leave the school because it hasn't met the standard Bill just talked about. So we have consequently, we have kids going all over town. It's been very expensive for us. That's still moving forward. There's some possibilities of that's being stopped with applying for the waiver. And that waiver is why you're reading all of the reforms. That the only way they're going to get the waiver is they're going to make all these adjustments. And that can help us maybe not next year, but the year after. So we've had to add some busing to here. In this thing that Gladys was talking to you about, we were talking with the bus company. We have permission to do a 5-year contract. You may recall 5 years ago, we renegotiated and saved about $2.5 million over 5 years. Next year is the last year of that contract, so we can take a peek at they approach this as how to maintain our contract. So we've been able to mitigate some of that, but it has to go through a process in order to get there. If it does, we will save some money. We have some very low numbers in there, very competitive. So, over time, we're not just trying to save for next year, although we are looking, down the road. We're also opening the school in 2 years. It's going to, I think it's going to happen if the referendum, if something happens at the middle school. If not, we're going to have major issues. But if that happens, we need to plan for that as well. So, we're keeping an eye on that as well. But that's how the budgets are broken down. The maintenance to move it forward, the enrollment, the second page there with enrollment issues and mandates, and then the value-added program that we just talked about. And some of that's going to change. Not only is the benefit piece, but how this whole conditional funding is going to play out in that whole process. And that's what we've been trying to get our arms around.
And we're still negotiating other contracts throughout the, calling all our vendors in and saying, this is where we want to be, what's going to happen. So we're moving, slowly on that, but hopefully we'll be able to make some changes in our Honeywell contract, our gas contract, our refuse contract, Pitney Bowes contract. So I'm meeting constantly with them and saying, okay, this is where I want to be. I don't want to increase next year. How are we going to handle that? So we're moving. Any contract we have, we're trying to renegotiate.
And I think one of the advantages of this working together has been if there's something in the budget where there's some spots where some expenditures don't have to happen, and then things can be picked off, we work with the city to pick some things off so that, they're not exposures for us next year. And that's been helpful on both sides, whether we're using personnel together or software or hardware, whatever it is. There's some things that we can do. Overall, it may not seem like when you put it together, it does help us to control cost. So we expect this number to be down. How far down will depend on some of these contracts that we renegotiate.
We're also working with Public Works, Park and Rec, see where we can work together. We want to make some classrooms in the middle school, divided classrooms. Rick has been very helpful with us to get the plumbers in, and we'll build the walls and so forth. So it's a good cooperative relationship that we have with the city.
Yeah, one of the credits that we were paying for one, there was a chargeback in last year, and we're going to mitigate that. That's $300,000. So things like that, small heads up, dollar here, dollar here. You got $1 million pretty soon.
Todd, did you have any idea of, I know last year, I believe it was last year, year before last, after everything was settled and the budget was taken care of, and then a little while after that, there was some money that was found by the Board of Ed, so on and so on. Is there any indication that there's anything out there that we should be aware of, maybe coming
Well,
up?
if you find some, I want to be there.
Yeah, so,
Okay. There was no money found. There was money that was in a gentleman's agreement with the mayor, and I think Dave knows, in terms of the era money that came in, was $2 million, 2+, that was carried over. And rather than go through a very complex system of accounting, we simply said to the mayor, when we receive money, we'll return it. So we overspent, and then we just cut a check and returned it to the town. That's the big, right, Dave?
Yeah, I understand what you're referring to, and you're absolutely right. I think what you're referring to is something that came up during the audit, but that you're privy to some of the stuff because you sit on the audit committee,
right.
and that's you kind of have had the pleasure of seeing the sausage be made. And and as Ed knows, being my counterpart on the Board of Ed side, oftentimes when they do encumbrances, the auditors are going to go through all that stuff at the year end. And they look at our estimates, they look at what happens, and oftentimes when we make an estimate in July, that gets changed in, say, October, November, December, when the real numbers start to come in. And so we start making adjustments accordingly. And, there's some adjustments in workers' comp. And because some of those claims that had come in, PERMA made adjustments, and they're the ones that are providing us those numbers to us and to the school, and some other adjustments as well. So what ended up happening is that the encumbrance number went down. So just to provide some clarity on it with accounting.
But with the audit, don't they take that into consideration when they write the report?
Sure they do, and they did. And that's been addressed. Ed has addressed those, those high estimates, if you will. And you guys have set procedures in to address that.
Yeah.
But
And,
from a net,
send a copy of our procedures to Dave, the board has them.
It's just a matter of tightening up the estimates a little bit. But as far as, keep in mind encumbrances isn't money that's been spent. It's money that, it's for the future. You're basically reserving something for the future.
So it's kind of like a cushion?
Nah, I wouldn't call it that.
No?
It's an estimate. It's not a, it's a commitment of future funds that, it's not last year's, you didn't spend it last year. It was really something that you anticipate doing this year, but, with things like, workers' comp and some of those others,
Workers'
we
comp,
didn't need to.
Because they figured out that we're going to
We had
spend
the
X
reserve on
amount of
the
dollars
books.
to reserve, because we had to pay the first 500. Well, thank God we didn't have a lot of accidents during the last quarter, so that reserve went way down. That's
And just the last thing I'll say on this, because I know accounting is boring for most folks, and I enjoy it, but we had a reserve on the books for
Explains a lot about you, Dave.
Huh?
That explains a lot about you.
and the sausage he's going to get.
Yeah. We had a reserve on the books for workers' comp. And we started that a few years ago, and about 4 years ago, we've just been building that. We've encouraged the school to build that up to an adequate level, as we had done as well. So.
Is that the Gatsby thing that we were doing? The required amounts? I mean, it's got, the concern we had was that if we were lucky enough to get through the year, and I see this as everybody's money, town's money, I don't see it as my money, your money, it's the town's money. If there are some expenditures that we don't have to expend at the end of the year, we have been talking about putting it in this accounting system that's allowing us to hedge any future problems, rather than just doing with it. So that's the money that's being deposited in now. That's been a healthy thing for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, for things that can have some major swings, such as workers' comp.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
a
big
couple
deal.
cases can And really, if you haven't adequately reserved for those, they can be extremely costly. And, you know, we're required to properly reserve for those. And up until, as I said, a few years ago, we were not properly reserved.
3 years ago, actually.
Yeah, actually, it was about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Jack?
5 years ago, my first office.
Why is the freshman sports under maintenance budget?
It's not in
Okay.
this year's budget.
Pardon?
It
It was not in this year's budget.
wasn't in this year's budget.
Okay.
We did not budget for it, so to move it forward, it wasn't there, it would move forward at 0. That's the only reason.
Okay.
I got a question, Sal. Explain to me, and I'm referring to the high school, you've got in the various departments, and I could have the names incorrect, but you have department chairman and department coordinator. Is that correct? What's
Let me talk, let me just, yes and no. Go ahead.
That's fair.
I mean, it's worse than sausage. I guess.
All right, explain to me,
Let me explain.
because I was there 35 years, and there was one person.
One person.
There was one person.
Yeah.
in the
Well, what
department.
happened was a few years ago, and again, remember, the peak back I said to you is that we've had, the last 4 or 5 years, we've reduced that budget. Our span of control, which was number of administrators per teachers and faculty, has increased dramatically. So rather than having a flat structure, guys, we have a different structure, particularly at central office. But the feet on the grounds people, the people that had to be supporting teachers, we had single administrators that were running social studies, one full-time administrator. We had another one that was doing science, one that was doing math. All of those. Huh?
That's all I care about, science.
Well, the science of it wasn't working because what created, quite frankly, not only was it, I think, inefficient, there were great silos and not good communication that was occurring. So what has happened, when we started the restructuring, along with the teachers union at the time, because the administrators, you may recall, the teachers union negotiated this, we put in the department chairman. Now, the difference between the department chairman and those administrators had to work under what they call a 92 certificate, or an administrator. They did summative evaluation, all that. The current department chairman are teachers who work in their craft as a teacher for 2 periods, and then they're released from their time budgeted so they could work with department issues and help with teaching and learning instructionally. And they do formative assessment of teachers. The summative assessment that was done by these full-time administrators now done by the associate principals and the principals at the high school. And these people now are, instead of being K-12, we tried to have them what we call 6 through 12, although that's been a little shaky. They spend most of their time at the high school. So the difference is great. These are teachers that are working with release time to be, the people call them leaders. They're really department chair. They work under a 105 certificate, which is a certificate that is not used very much in the state, but is legal to be used. It's recognized for that purpose for teachers' retirement, which makes it permissible. But these are teachers teaching with release time to work with their departments. So we have one in the core area. And then we consolidated the other areas. These full-time administrators, we have now their coordinators. They're doing math, science, STEM, that's the STEM we call it now, humanities, and we have bilingual, and we still have the same person doing our reading language, our reading program. So we've consolidated all of those folks. And the only other person we had as a director doing that was Sue Rice, who did technology. She had been reduced, and she's out of that mix. So that's our structure now.
Is she still with the board, or she retired?
She works with us part-time. You have our multi-million-dollar structure that needed to have some maintenance. So she's back on a consultant basis to convene meetings and making sure that the operation's moving forward. She's been doing it now. This is her 2nd year. In the budget, we're asking for something else, and that's where we're working with the city. We're going to bring someone on together so that we wouldn't have to use Sue in that fashion anymore. So that's what we're doing. They're not administrators, they're teachers working under this release time.
Are they teachers that are part-time that have a stipend?
No. Well, the stipend is part of the release time because of the added work that they're doing. If they weren't doing this department chairman, they'd be teaching 5 periods. So for the release time and for the extra work of the evaluation, the curriculum, the ordering, and the managing, the scheduling, they do receive a stipend for that.
But they're
That's-
working less as a teacher, do they get the full salary?
Oh, yeah, because they're on the teacher's salary list.
I just want to make sure I understand that. So
Yeah.
a teacher,
Let's say
Who has-
I hired
wears
you.
different
I
hats.
hired Greg to be the science teacher. And I go to him and say, would you like to be department chairman? He says, yes, he interviews and gets the job. Instead of teaching 5 classes, now he'll teach 2 classes. And then he'll manage the other
but he would
12.
still get paid the same salary for
That's-
being a teacher for
that's
teaching
correct.
5 classes.
That's right.
And additional money
No.
and a stipend.
And a stipend, a much smaller stipend. When we did this whole reorganization, we saved, I mean, I can't remember the exact number, but quite a bit of money. We went from full-time administrators to this approach, which I think is better, more support to the teachers directly. Now, if you look at what other places do, we are on the skinny side of how we pay our folks, because we simply take your salary wherever you're at. So let's say you were there 35 years, and he's making X amount of dollars. Here comes Joe, just comes in, and he's been there 5 years. But Joe wants to do this work, so he gets release time. I pay Joe at a different salary, less than this. So there's discrepancies there. Some districts say, okay, no matter what you pay this department chairman, it's here, and it's above everybody else. We don't do that. We negotiated a contract that allows us to pay the salary and not make up the variance. And that's not usual, I can tell you that. We're very lucky to do that. So I think it's much more efficient, effective, and more hands-on for teachers. And these people actually know the kids, know what they want, know the sectioning. They're very helpful to us. They're good eyes on the ground for us.
Mrs. Kevin,
Mr. Scarpati.
the new teaching staff, 5 of them are in the middle school and the high school, right? 2 in the middle school, 3 in the high school. Is that right?
We think so. No, there's some elementary.
Well, yeah, that's minor. I mean, there's only one. I can understand that, because we just figured to take care of it, so a lot of it. So is the vast increases in our, this is all our kids, it's not just ours or yours, it's ours, is in the middle school and in the high school. And in the lower grades, are they pretty stagnant, or are they usually, for my many years on your side, on the other side there, the lower grades are always got a lot of children in it. And then as they go up higher, for some reason it gets less. They leave, and it's unfortunate that someone will leave and some things happen to them. Then they can turn 16 and things happen. So apparently our problem is not in the lower grades, it's in the upper grades.
It's actually.
Now, this is your call. I know the board there is the only person, and they can do these things, the line items and everything. But also, is there new programs in your budget? Any new programs at all? Are we pretty much stagnant and only getting increases in the upper staff because of enrollment?
The current budget, not the budget, there are no, I'm looking at that, there are no programs, new programs that are in there.
So the 5 staff, the majority,
The staff are
only because of the enrollment.
And also because of science, secondary science. There are 3 science teachers that are needed because of...
I can speak to it, Joe. I understand your question. It's a good one. No new programs, number 1. Number 2, the STEM program that we put into place to balance the enrollment at the 2 middle schools, our vision always was to have 106 graders, 107th graders, 108th graders. We currently have 106 graders, 106 graders coming in, 106 graders moving to 7th grade, and if we have 50 8th graders, we're going to have another 100 moving there. So we'll have 106 graders, 107th graders, and now 108th graders, which will require 2 additional teachers because there are 4 teachers each grade level. They take 25 kids each, and they rotate.
And that's in the contract. We have a certain amount in the
Exactly.
contract, so there's nothing.
Well, certification is pushing the issue too, Joe.
And the lower grades,
We have 2.
that I can see, but is the enrollment in the kindergarten, whatever, the first grade, the lower grades are where you follow, which goes...
Yeah, we've been growing, but our principals are reporting back, they think tightening up, and if you remember, we increased the ratio of 1 teacher to, instead of 20 kids to 22 or even 25 now. So we're able to absorb those with 2 possible placeholders, Sally Ruff and South Street. The 3 at the high school that you mentioned, it's because the fact that we had kids in science courses who weren't getting labs, and they were lab classes. so this has to last. If I could go back for a minute, colleague, with you. I just want to go back, both you and Greg had some good points. Just for the record, we went from 52 administrators a few years ago down to 34. A dramatic cut. I believe we now have the smallest central office staff and the smallest senior staff of any school system our size in Connecticut, and probably some that are bigger than us. The second thing is we were cited in the Cambridge report as not having enough direct supervision of teachers at the high school level. But because we cut so many people at the administrative ranks, it hurt us that way. Compounding part, you heard Mrs. Cooper speak to it, is that the board made the decision, which central administration certainly supported, at all costs keep teachers in the classroom. So we cut the administrators. What happened then was there wasn't enough direct supervision of teachers. Cambridge came in and said, you're going to have to do something better than what you're currently doing. We didn't want to go back and add more administrators. So what we did was we took teachers and said, and Colleen's point, it's not like they're getting 5 teaching periods worth of salary and only teaching 2. They also have the other 3, but that's their salary for doing this supervisory work, which was our way of addressing the Cambridge citations that we got from the state of Connecticut. So when all was said and done, we saved well over $100,000 on the model permanently, and we still had more direct supervision. The only downside, as the state is moving now toward an increased supervisory model for teacher evaluation, where they really like to see every teacher observed and evaluated each year. Our model is once every 4 years. So we don't have enough administrative personnel to back into that state model. And now we're struggling with that, and that's something we're going to have to come around. But as Sal said, it's helped a little bit by having these department heads, because with this 105 certification, they're able to do partial observations, not the full-blown summative, but the ongoing formatives.
I have a question pertaining to that. If you have someone, a teacher that is only going to teach 3 classes now and take on the extra work, who teaches the other 2 classes?
It's part of the FTEs. You still have to make up that time. You still have to, if there's 20 seconds.
Are you hiring another teacher?
Well, there's teachers there, yes, sure. If there are 20 sections in a department, 20 sections, then you got to cover all 20 sections. The department chairman, if it's released 3 periods, that means you're 3 short, so you got to get someone to teach those 3, and we have it within there to do it. But even at that, turn the page.
You just use the other teachers, and
at times,
is that why the study halls are so?
No, the study halls are there simply because
of the electives.
Because of the lack of electives. You know, not only at the secondary level, the way you have class sizes, and if kids can't get into a class and there's no electives, they go to study hall. Unlike what you can do at the elementary schools, that doesn't exist. But if you page 14, right? I think from a policy standpoint, it's hard to comprehend that. But when you look at the efficiency of dollars, I had some prefatory remarks with that. Take a look at page 14. Why don't you explain that to me?
Yeah, page 14 and page 15 go together. What we did here was there's a standard net current expenditures per pupil by the state, and that's 100%, whatever that is. And on the pages before, it tells you what they were. And we tried to see where was Danbury versus the state versus the DRG, which is our group of towns that are in the H. So we're just saying that we are efficient in that our net current expenditures are below what the state average is and below what our DRG is in H. So we're just showing you that efficiency.
And we show this too. I don't know if I'm that proud of that. I don't know if I'm that. Well, I'm not. Quite frankly, I'm not. That's why I said I think we're at a tipping point. We've tried to be very mindful of everything, and we're to the point. That's why we're working so hard together. How are we going to get this thing moving forward? We are a school district in need of improvement. We have an achievement gap. We are succeeding, but we need to do more things for our kids. Our kids' poverty. We have a number of poverty level kids that are increasing exponentially. It is going the other way. That is reflective of our mosaic in town. Those are our kids.
Do you have a configuration of the students that are in that poverty level
Well, yeah, I mean, well, if, let me think I understand. What we identified by free and reduced lunch. That's the only common standard that we have. So it's predicated on their income level. For those parents that apply, we have the average in Danbury is 50%. Some schools are lower. Some schools are lower, but I don't think anybody's lower than 35%. You have to see that. And then the highest one we have is at 70%, Morris Street is 70%.
We've never seen growth like this.
Just 70% one school, yeah.
None of us have seen growth over our entire career. This dramatic increase in poverty, obviously driven by the economic climate, and it crosses all ethnic groups. It's not one particular group.
Now, to get a reduced lunch, what do you have to do to apply for that? The form?
It's a form and a salary, and, you know, so forth.
And is there somebody that
And then it has
Yeah,
to be ordered.
we have one, yeah. We check it, and then we go through another check, and then the
Did
state.
they have to do the tax return?
Yes.
The auditor.
The audited one?
Yeah.
Not so that all
They
of
have to
them
show us
are-
their W-2s and so forth, how much they're making, the week, whatever it
Is
is.
there a certain time of the year that you get asked for this?
But we do it in the beginning of the year. Some people during the year have come up that were payers, or they lost their job, so they filled out the forms and so forth.
That number, by the way, is what drives the supplemental work that we can do in Danbury called the Title I. But it's based on October 1. So by October 1, we try to get as many students as possible to sign up for it that are eligible. Then we turn in those numbers. That's the number that I'm giving you.
So that's
But
helpful.
Well, by October 1, it's helpful from, that's why I say it's a mosaic, you know, it's coming together. But it's still needed, but that's still predicated that determines how much money that we get in terms of Title I. But after October 1, all the kids that apply don't go to that number. They qualify, but they don't qualify for state reimbursement for us. It's a little different.
So we have to pay for it.
No, the government still pays for it. We just can't use those. Let's say we're at 50%. And after October, if they made me average it in December, we're at 58%. Well, then when I apply for Title I money, we get more money. But the youngsters still get reimbursed for their lunches or their breakfast. They still pay for that.
The government has to say, okay, this is the date on everything. I'd like to see the grants for the state, October 1.
They use October 1 for everything. For enrollment. and everything.
But if somebody comes in next week, you know, who's lost a job, they can fill out the forms and get free or reduced lunch.
Anytime.
Yes.
But October 1st is the cutoff to fill out the form for reduced lunch.
For the state.
For the state.
For the state.
But any time that something happens, just so happens a parent call me, you know, husband lost a job, so forth, come in, fill out the forms. and so forth.
What is that rate up at the high school?
The high school, all high schools are the same. A lot of people, they do not apply for that. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, I could get that for you. But all normal high schools, kids don't like to apply for that. But what happens is, if we know that they have a brother or sister, you know, I mean, because the brother or sister has gotten free or reduced lunch, they automatically get it. But sometimes they don't come back and say.
They might not use it.
Correct.
The only reason I have a little more idea, we had to apply for a grant, and to extend that grant, our high school kids had to qualify. And they used it by some percentage points, so there's about 30% that made themselves available to as of October 1st this year. And we know there were more kids, but that's all that applied for, which negated us getting the grant.
Wow.
By a few, but that's how wide. The kids at the secondary level, they tend not to
Even the elementary families are embarrassed. So they don't want to be recognized as that because they're kids.
I don't know if you have, but I don't know if there's any any rumors or anything we can talk about. I know I've heard about the return of the $2 million, but that was their money. The 400,000, how come it's 400,000, why not $1 million? I've already talked about that. Sal's satisfaction, your satisfaction.
Hold on one second.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know if there's anything else. No, we don't have any new programs. And we do work with the city to pick off things that we do need. We are working feverishly, I can't tell you how hard, to try to access added resources that the government wants to give us. Now, in saying that to you, we all have to remember, I heard someone talk about legislations like watching, want to watch it happen, it's like watching a sausage being made. The governor uses that term. We don't know if that's going to happen. So even though they say they're going to give us that money, so we can't really rely on it. We have a sense that they want to give us that money, but we don't know. So that's why we're trying to figure out, how do we move forward. The board has been saying, quite frankly, what are we obliged to do K-12, between 8 and 3, So when you ask me about freshman sports, we're looking at, could I participate? Is that a good or bad thing? I have my philosophical reasons why I think it's strong. It's one of those bad choices among the things that you don't want to do that you may have to do. We're looking at Head Start. That's on the table. I mean, it's all on the table. The town is building a multi-million-dollar building. It's not that we're not supporting Head Start, but at what levels can we support that versus the boards have the propensity to say, add time to a youngster's schedule, look at full-day kindergarten. Is that something you can do down the road? Well, that's back here, but we have preschool. Can you eliminate that? So we're looking at all that stuff. I think everything is a go here in terms of what we're doing. All I can say to you is that we're working very hard to try to give the youngsters the best shot that we can give them, access as much money as we can for you through the state, and continue supporting our teachers. Who, by the way, I go in those classrooms, we have a guided reading program. That means that kids can read on grade level and above. I can't give them the materials, they buy the materials, and I say thank you to them every time they do that. They do it on their own. They do it because the youngsters do it. So, we are in this thing together in a lot of ways.
So it's Head Start. There's one I heard a lot about. Are you trying to develop? Is the board trying to,
No,
be out of it?
it's not that the board's trying to, I don't want to speak.
Go ahead.
No, I don't, it's not.
You asked for a rumor.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's what I'm saying is.
discussion about
Yeah.
We're having a discussion.
A discussion about the Head Start.
Head Start, because it's not between the traditional, let's say, 8 to 3. That's why the conversation, it's not whether or not it adds value to the youngsters' preparation in entering kindergarten. We have 81% of our kids have experience going into kindergarten. The state average is about 75%. The city average is about 70%. So that 81% is not just out of these new 500 seats that you're hearing the governor talk about for readiness programs. So our kids are having preschool. So if that's eliminated, we service through Head Start 280 students. It depends on if it's reduced, what it would do to that. It probably still puts us into a compliance of, not a compliance, the state average, not particularly liking that average, that I'd rather be above it, but it still puts us there. So the board's saying, what do we have to do? What needs to go to do that? And just kind of prioritize, just having conversations.
Well, I was sad to even hear Rick come up. Head Start's the best program that the city's ever had, or the state and the federal government had. You identify them children when they're young. There's a lot less problems when they're older, and they're a lot less, there's more aptitude to get ahead in the world. And I don't even know why that conversation came up. One day we'll have to do it next time around. I want to know why something like that would even went to everybody's mind.
That's right.
I mean, that's your guys' venue, but believe me. Well, I'd stand on my head in front of you.
Well, I think that's been probably a predominant.
Especially when a lot of our children are disadvantaged.
It does impact. Joe, you've been there a number of years. It's not about whether or not it's good or it's bad. It's a matter of, can we run the program from 8 to 3 and do this as well? And I'm saying to you is that I said we're the tipping point. We've reduced so far that now it's really getting to bother people. It's a fine language because now it's affecting them. I'm getting calls from people. It's like, my kid can't do this and my kid can't. Well, yeah. Because my kid can't get on that stop, they got to go down to that stop. They've been doing it here for years. Well, we don't have enough money to provide that kind of busing. I mean, now it's beginning to bug people because it's hitting them personally.
That's right. It's not my kid.
It's
if it's not my kid, then it's
and that's
don't
what's
have to worry
beginning.
about.
That's what's beginning to
That's not our thing. It's all our kids.
I know, but I'm saying the
Well,
reason
we
why.
don't all think like that, Joe.
That's unfortunate, but that's the way it's supposed to be.
It's exactly the way it's supposed to be.
So.
I have, in your packet that you gave us, there was a few things that you had on here from the 2000.
That's the narrative?
Yeah, the narrative.
Just to show you what we looked at when we were reducing the budget, that page there?
Yeah, for last year.
Okay.
Certain cuts that were supposedly made that, I was just wondering if they happened.
I don't know which ones are.
Well, the elimination of the full-day kindergarten program.
No.
The cuts in textbooks, we did cut textbooks, we know that, but we weren't, you didn't cut it to 50,000, you're gonna cut it to 130,000. It was 250, now it's
It was
130
250, we cut it down
to 130. The elimination of the technology education at the middle school level,
Yes.
Yes.
that was eliminated last year.
And family and consumer
And
science
family
also.
consumer science.
But we did eliminate French. Are those, is that still on the table with this budget, or we don't need to worry about that? With your
Well,
budget?
right now, French and Spanish is still on, world language is still on the table to be implemented at the middle school. That is not, so that's the maintenance budget, just moving it forward.
So in this packet that you gave me, or us, tonight, these were the reductions from last year. It says impact of 2011-2012 budget
Mhm.
reductions. Can you go through it and tell me, are there, what impact is it gonna have for next year?
I can't do that yet.
No,
I
from
mean-
your numbers.
Well, but I still can't do that yet. But you asked me if that's in the budget. That is in the budget to keep. Those are the things, if you tell me out of my budget request.
I want to know what the numbers that you've applied for, and they're asking us for.
That's,
These are included?
yeah, no, they are, that's what I'm saying. I gave you that because if you turn around and say, which I figured we could anticipate, what are you going to do if, on that page, as a result of a lot of thinking, what we would do is go right there and start looking at those things again and say, okay, maybe the French has to go.
Oh, so these haven't been eliminated yet?
Not all of them.
Right, some have from last year.
That's right. That's right.
And the remaining will be
If we
subject
have to-
for elimination if you don't.
That's correct. But in the maintenance part of the budget, it's taking what we have now, just moving it forward.
Does someone back there have a question, I think? Mrs. Franzello, did you want to add to
No,
that?
I just, no, some of those have been eliminated. I didn't want you to think that.
Right, okay.
Colin?
Yes.
If you go to page 18 of the handout you referencing.
Yeah, 17.
18 though, actually, well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
If you look at page 18, you'll see reduced coordinated health services by 50%. It's the top cell on the left. That was done. The next cell on the left, assistant superintendent, we eliminated that. Coordinator, curriculum administrator, fine and applied arts, we eliminated that. Director of information services, we did not fill that. Director of special services was full-time to 70%, we did that. We reduced the athletic director. Many, it doesn't, I don't want to waste your time going through this, but many of these cuts, in fact, did happen. You'll see.
Last year.
Last year.
For this year.
For this year.
Yeah.
And if we're cut further, we go back to that list, the ones that we didn't, that's the starting point for conversation.
Well, I think it's important to know which ones are cut, and which ones. Can we go through? I mean, pretty quickly. We did not reduce, we didn't eliminate full-day kindergarten. Right?
Let me just get that. Give me a second. Great, so let's.
It won't take long.
No, that's fine.
Can we just have one full-day kindergarten in each school?
One full day
Yes.
for each school.
Okay, full-day.
We've got 11 full-day kindergarten programs. As Phil said, the school district has one full day in each school. Okay, we did not do that.
The only exception to that is the magnet school, there are 3. But that's in the plan that the state had to approve to allow us to get the funding, their operations plan. So of our 11 schools that have kindergarten, they're not magnet school, they only have one program, one full day.
So there was the cut full day kindergarten to just one full day.
No, it traditionally has been one full day and the rest are half day.
All right.
We were talking about universal half day K.
Textbooks.
What's that down to, Bill?
It's 125, 130.
That was reduced, but not to 50, 130.
120, I'm sorry, 120. Right.
Elimination of technology was done. French was not touched, that was left on.
Elimination of 3 teachers positions at the high school and special education elective areas. No, was not done.
Colleen, just before you go on, if you go back to that elimination of technology education, if you move your finger to the far right, you'll see family and consumer. It's important because I think it gets to Greg's point before. Our instructional program has been substantially diminished. In part, we're seeing larger study halls, for example. If you look at the history, we eliminated tech ed, but you'll see family and consumer science was eliminated. And also the gifted program was eliminated and turned into an after-school program. So that went from serving a lot of kids down to a very small group of kids. And
So it was reduced.
Yep.
Well, it was 350,000 down to 20,000. I mean, it's just something to do after school.
350,000 down to 20,000.
350, right?
No, it's $9,090, $9,050.
No, from what?
About 350.
Yeah.
350.
And we're just adding to make it up for 25,000.
And
Elimination of 3 teaching positions at the high school and special education and elective areas.
I couldn't do that, no.
Kept them.
Yes.
Saved. We still have study halls that require 400 students.
And that's one of the, yeah, we were looking at the electives areas.
Did you eliminate 2 guidance counselors at the middle high school?
No, we did not.
Or reduced it? We did reduce the coordinator of
Yes.
health services by 50%.
Yes, that was the administrator, reduced by 50%, right?
Elimination of administrator positions. We got rid 1 assistant superintendent, curriculum and administrator for fine arts.
Yes.
That was eliminated. Administrator for REACH and Endeavor programs was
No,
not
no, we
eliminated.
didn't do the reach. No, that was not.
That was saved.
Yes. We didn't fill the director of information services.
That was cut.
Yes.
Or we didn't have it and we didn't that
We
refill.
didn't fill. She was-
So it wasn't refilled.
Not this year. We have a proposal to do it next year. That's what we're working with the city. Director of Special Services has been reduced to 70%.
Okay.
The athletic director was reduced. And I'm not sure about the guidance department head. We didn't fill that position.
So that was, okay, did not fill the technology system.
Analyst position, we did not fill that. Did not fill the elementary school psychologist. What did we do there, Joyce?
We did not fill it.
Did not fill that. So that we
Elimination of
did
3
3 paras, eliminate 2, so we did all of that. Did we do all of those?
Yes.
That's one
Cut
of them.
professional development from 130 to 34,000.
We did that.
Did that.
That's been-
Yeah. I don't think that's important. Okay, I just wanted to see if anyone from the Board of Ed would like to add to the discussion, and also any ex officio members. They wanted to have, if they had any questions that they wanted to ask? No? Mary Ty Schultz, I see you over there.
I do have a question about Head Start. Sorry, Joe. What is the funding that the federal government and the state give to the Head Start program?
The combined state, federal, and local. Local is $585,000, and the difference comes from state and federal.
Do you have those numbers?
186.
No.
No, I mean broken down.
Yeah.
How much does the state give? How much does the federal? I'm just trying to get a perspective.
Joe, do you have
Yeah, I have it. Head Start Federal is $694,000 from the federal. The state portion is
$214,707. And then $585,000 from the Board of Ed.
So we give more than double what the state gives to Head Start the city. All right, and my other concern with Head Start is, I don't know if you realize I'm also on the Housing Authority, and I have begun to realize that the children from Laurel Gardens are not being serviced at Laurel Gardens for Head Start. They're being bused over to Mill Ridge. And that's a concern. There are approximately maybe 3 to 4 families. It's putting, again, behind the 8 ball. It's a concern. The Head Start monies, I'm just concerned about it. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to kind of get a nonprofit, wean them off of city funds. I mean, is there something in place for this to happen where the nonprofit starts writing grants, asking the state for more money? Because I don't know, it doesn't really make sense that we're paying that much more than the state is giving to Head Start. Not that I mean, I think Head Start is a great program. I just feel like it's not in balance right now.
That's such a issue. That's why we're having dialogue seriously the first time. One of the issues that we have is when you don't have full-day kindergarten, you look for everything you can to level the playing field. I mean, that's what Joe's point is that he's making. While we can't provide it, the compression factor of that from 4 years ago, the city has paid for the difference that the feds and the state have not given them, because we own all of the employees. Now, if you eliminate that program entirely, there are 37 employees that we have to pay unemployment insurance, which is roughly around $200,000. That's not in this budget, by the way. So
There's no unemployment in this budget. I didn't see it.
There is unemployment.
Where is it?
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I tried to find it.
It's $200,000 in unemployment.
So that we would have to pay. So we're having conversations now about other programs. We eliminated, you may have recalled, 3 years ago, we had 2 literacy people that were helping with the, we eliminated the one because the grant went away and we couldn't sustain the program. And there's a lot of budgets that have been cut because the grants have been stabilized.
Sure.
And we've cut that much out of it. Head Start has not been touched. That's why we're seriously looking at, can we continue doing it? There's some real questions.
I mean, I'm not attacking it, I'm just asking questions about it.
That's what we're looking at. Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes.
I think Head Start is a good example of how we really, in the past, we might have looked at that program on its own, but I think, we've looked at what is the issue that we're trying to address here, and then we looked at the whole issue holistically, and Head Start, yes, comes into play. And very importantly so, because we're looking at building a building for Head Start. And then you take into the goals that Sal wants to do in the future, combined with our goals that we want to do in the future, in support of the education. And I think the important thing to recognize is, looking at these issues on its own is not the approach that we do anymore. We look at the whole thing together and try to solve it together, on a lot of levels. And that's the approach we've been taking quite a bit this year. And it's been working, very effectively. And we hope to, put together work with you guys to put together a package that makes sense, given our fiscal constraints as a city and the needs to deliver the educational services to the children. So, because when we put together a budget, in my view, and this is just my perspective, it's pretty much, the money is set aside. I don't expect it back. I can't say that for the departments. Just because I put a number in there doesn't mean they're not going to have the ability to spend it, because there are so many other factors that come into play. Other revenues, the building revenues, some other state revenues. But the fact of the matter is, when we set money aside in the budget for education, we expect you guys to do with it what you're, put your plan together. And when there's some money that comes back to us at the end of the year, hey, that's great. But we don't expect it. in my department. Yeah, I don't expect it, and you're obligated to return it.
Don't tell them that.
And and oftentimes we have worked together to try to address some anticipated needs in the upcoming year, because we know it's going to be a tight year, and it's like that at year end. You don't know what the next year's going to have, but you do know what this year's going to happen. So you try to work your numbers out to your advantage, and but we do that together. And I think that the important thing is that you do the job that we expect, that is expected of you, and so. But I guess the bottom line is, unlike the departments where I have to keep them, you can't spend all the money I put in your budget because of some other things. When we give you that number, whatever the number the council decides on, that I'm not expecting anything back. It's nice, but the reality is that's been earmarked for education.
Mrs. Molinari, did you have a question?
Not a question, I just wanted to address the Head Start issue. Just one little thing. The argument for us not funding Head Start is a good one, especially in the constraints that we have on this budget and budgets to follow. However, I don't think decimating it all at once is the way that we should go. Possibly just funding it less and less each year, and let Mr. Maloney, who is the executive director, go someplace else and find the funds that he needs is the way to do it humanely. Because otherwise we will just be decimating a wonderful program that has worked for us. And they are our children, they are our teachers. The fidelity to curriculum is important to us. They're teaching them the correct way so that when they get into kindergarten and first grade, they are prepared. So that's all I need to say about that.
Mr. Levy, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Mary, and I agree with what Sue was saying, that Head Start is a great program. I think that we're put in a position of making the choice, in some cases, whether we can have all-day kindergarten for all of the children that need it in our school system, or do we fund a federal program? And that's the choice. What I would like to know, though, is some of the in-kind services, such as utilities, teachers, benefits, and things of that nature that add on to the monies you were referencing. Actually, what is the add-on on the in-kind services?
I'll take the easy part. The $585,000 that we give them goes all to the benefits. To run the program for the 280 students, somewhere in the vicinity of $1.6 million. All of the utilities, remember, they're housed over at MRI, Mill Ridge Education's MRI. We pay for all the utilities. They pay for their own supplies and whatever, but we pay for all of that. Now, I'll just say, is that correct?
37.
How much, I don't know. Right?
So, really we're talking about somewhere in the order of maybe $3 million?
No, I don't think that much.
In-kind services along with...
We're paying utilities, but,
and teachers?
No. Teachers are in the...
Transportation?
Transportation, yes.
Transportation?
Yeah.
We'd have to get that number.
Yeah.
To be exact. But, that building would be open because we have our students there. But ever since they've been there, since I've been here, and when we had that as Mill Ridge Intermediate, we had 250 students there. We didn't charge them any, and that was given for the in-kind. Now, some of that, what we got to look at, and I don't know the answers because it's not my program, in order to qualify for grants, you have to have in-kind services to match up. So I don't know. That may have been a prerequisite in the getting all that. Although, stop and think about it, next year you have their own building. So you basically, $10 million, whatever it is. They have a building, I don't know what it is, but they have a building. You've been able to access some state money, but they'll be out, so we won't have any commitment for that. That's on theirs. We won't be paying their tab there. We won't. They'll probably be at our place on the outside of, depending when they're through, maybe to January, maybe sooner. but we wouldn't be paying for that.
But I would concur with what Sue was saying, that it certainly has been a good program for the community, and probably with the depressed economy, and it looks like this might be the new norm, we probably are going to see that program expand, and we shouldn't just drop it. But we should have a plan in place to back out of it.
Thank you very much, Warren.
You didn't hear Obama's going to fix everything?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn. I'm hoping we're going to try and work something out. That's what I'm going to shoot for. I don't have it set yet.
Okay, just so we have an idea.
I didn't forget, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.